All right, so lesson 19, AAA, rewriting as equivalent equations and solving. So this is basically two-step problems, solving two-step equations, day number 3. So we're going to solve two-step equations of the form px plus r equals q. I don't want you to freak out over that. That's just a general form, and then the language objective is actually rewriting those equations in an equivalent form. You have nothing to fill in for the why am I learning this, because this is really the third day of two-step equations. All right, so we have worked on single-step equations or one-step equations like that one. This is all background knowledge, things that we have worked on over the last almost a week now. And then we transition to two-step equations. And remember, we're always trying to do inverse operations. And we're trying to figure out what the variable can be to make a true statement. And we've also worked on justifications and checking. And remember, we always want to do the adding or subtracting part first. So, do we all agree? Let me back up for a second here. I just kept tapping and going too far. Do we all agree that that equation is pretty easy to solve, yes or no?
Yeah.
All right. And the reason is because it's in that form, px plus r equals q. It looks like that, where the variable part's right there, another number right there, and another number right there. That's what px plus r equals q form means. So what we're going to try and do today is make sure that all equations that we solve, that they look like that before we even make an attempt to solve. Here's another one that I think all of you would agree that is pretty easy to solve. Yes or no? Yeah. So we're going to try and make all of our equations look like that before we even start. That's what today is all about. All right. And I've already asked you that question. And we're going to try and make them all look like this. And the reason is because, for most students, it's an easier form to solve. All right. Let's take a look at number 1. So these first, I think 4 or 8, all we're going to do is to practice rewriting it. And sometimes it's really, really simple, really simple to do that. So let's take a look at number 1. What would that look like if we were writing it in the form px plus r equals q? What would that look like?
Px plus
No. We just want to rewrite that equation. It's got to have negative 10 and x in it somewhere. It has to have subtract 10 in it somewhere. It has to have a negative 140 in it somewhere. All we're doing here is we're attempting to rewrite these in an equivalent form. In other words, in a form that is really represents the same equation.
Negative 10x minus 10 equals negative 140.
Good. So sometimes it's as simple as taking what's on this side and putting it on the other side. Not flipping it, just taking it and moving it over to the other side, and then taking the negative 140 and moving it over to the other side. And now it's in the form px plus r equals q. It looks just like that. Okay? That's much easier to solve. All right. How about number 2? What would that look like? We're writing it as an equivalent equation. And number 2 is over here, by the way. Negative 2 equals negative 1 plus v over 8. Yes?
V over 8 plus negative 1 equals negative 2.
Okay, I like what you did there. That's v over 8. That's the px part. You said plus negative 1, and then equals negative 2. Now, could we have written it a little differently than that? Is there something that we could have done differently? It means the same thing. It's equivalent to it. Yes?
Negative 1 plus v8.
Okay, now I'm glad that you said that. You said negative 1 plus v over 8 equals negative 2. Is that in the form px plus r? No. The variable part needs to be first. So we don't really want to write it like that. Now, that doesn't mean that you couldn't write it like that and solve it. I'm trying to get all of you to write it in an equivalent form that's easier for all of you to solve. What would it look like?
The other way?
Well, we're still talking about another way of writing v over 8 plus negative 1 equals negative 2.
V over 8
And that's what I was looking for. You said -1 and I wrote -2. Let me change that. Yeah, so that is also an equivalent form. V over 8 minus 1 equals -2. Either one of those would be fine. That's in the form that we want. We want the variable part to be written first. All right, everybody try number 3 and number 4, please. Write them in the form px plus r equals q. We want the variable part to be first. Okay, I heard lots of good things there. But listen very carefully. Px plus r equals q. What that means essentially is whatever variable is in our equation, we want that part to be written first. And for some of you, it's hard to tell what the sign is, but just look at the sign in front of it. So if the variable part has to be written first, then a positive 7b in number 3 has to be written first. And then as far as the second part, that is a -10. So you could either write it as -10 or plus -10. Those are equivalent to each other. I like -10 better. And then that was equal to, of course, 130 just needs to come over to the other side. So there is number 3. Number 4, I'm going to use the same strategy. This is a positive b over 10. How do I know? I look at the sign in front of it. That's the part that has to be written first. This 6 is negative. So you could either write plus -6 or subtract 6, and then that is equal to -7. So any questions on number 3 or number 4? All right, I want all of you to do 4, 5, no, where did number 4? 5, 6, 7, and 8. Do all 4 of them, please. We're not solving anything yet. Number 5, easy. Should be m over 10 plus 5 equals 4. Number 6, easy. 6n plus 4 equals 124. But then we have number 7. It is obvious that it has to be something equals -32. That's obvious because we're taking that and moving it over here. But in the part that right now is on the right-hand side that has to be on the left-hand side, we know that the r part has to come first. Some of you have positive 2r, some of you have negative 2r. Is that 2r positive or negative? Okay, that was exactly what I was talking about. About half of you think it's positive and half of you think it's negative. If you are not sure, then you should be writing it in an equivalent form by adding the opposite. And that will clear up whether that is a positive 2r or a negative 2r. What is it now? It was a negative before. It's just that you didn't see it. So I want to deal with this in 2 ways. So I think it is obvious now that this is what it should be. And if you didn't get that, fix it right now. Now, I want to take a look at it from what I was saying on the first slide. So everybody look up here, please. Here is what I said on the first slide. And this goes back to combining like terms. Look, once again, it's obvious that it has to be something equal to -32. Take, when you circle, and take the sign in front of it. It will tell you whether it's positive or negative. Is that 2r positive or negative? It's negative. Look at it. And I proved it by adding the opposite. It is a -2r. And when I said earlier about some of you not paying any attention to some of the things that I'm talking about here, that's what I'm talking about. I'm giving you a tip to tell you whether things are positive or negative. And then the 6 is obviously negative. Once again, I circled the number with the sign in front. So you have 2 choices. Add the opposite everywhere you see subtraction, which is not changing the problem. It's changing it to an equivalent form. Or circle the terms with the signs in front. That will tell you whether it's positive or negative. Okay, so that one should be -2r minus 6 equals -32. And number 8 was easy also. I think I'm going to add one more problem to this side. I'm not going to number it because that'll mess up our numbering system here. But I'm just going to write it right in the middle. And I want you to rewrite it in the form px plus r equals q. Here we go. Try this one. Take that and write it in the correct form, please. All right, so what should that look like then? What should it look like? Yes.
Negative 14 plus negative 5c equals 15.
Okay, so all you did was add the opposite. That's not in the form px plus r equals q. The variable part that we are solving for, that is the part that has to be written first. So what you did is you added the opposite. That's a good start. But that's not in the right form. Okay, do you understand what I mean? Okay, what should it be?
Negative 5c minus 14 equals 15.
There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and do what was mentioned first, add in the opposite. And if that's what it takes for you to understand that that is a negative 5c, that's fine. All you're doing is writing it as an equivalent form, and then minus 14 equals 15. That's what it should be. Make sure the variable part is written first. Okay, let's go over to the other side. Now, we're going to rewrite them and solve. So let's do one problem at a time. Everybody rewrite number 9 first, and then solve it. You know what? I suppose we should talk about what that looks like in terms of rewriting it first. What does it look like in terms of rewriting it? Quickly turn to your shoulder partner and exchange what you think it looks like after you rewrite it. You can either add the opposite or you can circle it with the sign in front of it. And I think that's one little tip that some of you are missing. That is a negative 9r. And then look at the 1. Is this 1 positive or negative? It's not a trick question. Positive or negative? Positive 1. And that equals negative 71. I'm trying to give you guys little tips that will help you determine whether something is positive or negative. All right, finish it off, please. All right, let's take a look at number 9. We should have subtracted 1 from both sides. That is the inverse operation. That's also the subtraction property of equality. We talked about that last week. And we have negative 9r equals negative 72. The inverse operation to multiplying is dividing. That is the division property of equality. And so r, the solution is r equals positive 8. We have a negative divided by a negative. Everybody rewrite number 10 and solve it. All right, let's take a look at number 10. First of all, if we rewrite this in an equivalent form, px plus r equals q, we always write the variable part first. That is a positive x over 2. This is a negative 5. And then we have equals negative 11. To solve that, we would first add 5 to both sides. That's the inverse operation. And that's the addition property of equality. And now I've kind of run out of room off to the side, but we have a positive 5 and a negative 11. That makes negative 6. And then the inverse operation to dividing is multiplying, and the solution is x equals negative 12. All right. So we're going to finish today with doing the same thing, but with one-step equations. And I know it says to solve these, but I'm not concerned about solving 11 through 14. Let's take this one at a time. And I think that we should be able to do these very, very quickly. Raise your hand if you can tell me what number 11 should look like if it's in this form. Yes?
V plus negative 6 equals negative 16.
So let me ask you this. How did you know the V was positive?
Because there's a positive sign, there's an addition sign in front of it.
How did you know that 6 was negative?
Because it has a negative sign in front of it.
Is there a different way of writing this other than V plus negative 6 equals negative 16?
V minus 6?
There you go. Either one. These are equivalent forms. Either one of these would be fine. Okay, everybody quickly do 12 through 14. All right, we did not solve these, but number 11 should look like that. We already talked about that one. Number 12 should look like this. Either n minus 11 equals negative 3 or n plus negative 11 equals negative 3. Number 13 would look like this. 14r equals negative 126. And number 14 would look like this. X over 16 equals 2. The reason, once again, for rewriting these in this form is because we all agreed that they're easier to solve when that variable part is written first. And that is the whole reason. And in the homework, you just need to follow the directions. It's telling you to rewrite it first, then solve it, like we did some of these. Yes?
It was like